Hey everybody, welcome to the Level Up Leadership Podcast. My name is Mike Delgado.
My name is Patty Guevara.
This podcast is designed to help you get to know the leaders here at Experian and also gain insight into the leadership skills and traits needed to grow our careers.
In this podcast, we'll talk mentorship, career navigation, handling rejection, work-life balance, mental health, diversity and inclusion, and so much more.
A lot of our recordings are done through WebEx, so sometimes the audio quality is not perfect. We apologize. We'll get better in time, but we hope you get a lot of information out of these shows. We certainly have.
Today we're speaking with Amy Priest, a Wellbeing Manager for Experian United Kingdom and Ireland. Amy also chairs the Experian Pride Network and is a founding member of the everyMIND mental health network. Amy, you're a Wellbeing Manager for Experian UK&I. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I feel like I haven't actually seen that title a lot.
Yeah, sure. So the actual role was introduced to Experian UK&I in 2018. I came back in July time, I think, of that year. And I joined the position in January 2019. So I've been just in the post about over a year now. And that is definitely flown by. But in terms of the kind of remit of a wellbeing manager, it is quite far-reaching. It's there's definitely no one day that's the same. And I think from what I can kind of gather is that you kind of there's a bit of a structure and a strategy that you kind of stick to and you decide at the start of the year, okay, we want to focus on physical well-being, mental health, financial well-being, lifestyle well-being, all of those different areas. And we kind of say, okay, throughout the year, we'll talk about this, we'll talk about nutrition and sleep and resilience and what mental health looks like, and have all these fantastic campaigns. And then you kind of get hit by a pandemic and it's, okay, all systems go. What do our people need? They need well-being support right now. And what does that well-being support look like? So you're quickly scanning as much on the internet as you can do. You're getting as many resources together. You're having thousands of conversations with people all over the business to see what the need is, where that attention needs to be, what support needs to be available to people, how do we keep connected, all of these different conversations that we're having right now to try and get the support where people need it the most. So yeah, lots to kind of, keep me busy, certainly. I'm one of two wellbeing managers at Experian. We're both very, very passionate about supporting our people and working together to try and cover all of what we just discussed. To try and bring that to life at Experian.
Amy, how are you managing with all this? Because you are trying to take care of the well-being of so many employees, providing all these different services, letting people know how they can get help. In the meantime, you also are being impacted by this pandemic. And I'm kind of curious, how are you managing through all this?
Well, thank you for asking me that, Mike. It is quite rare that I get asked that question. And I think that's just purely because we're in our wellbeing team, we're all in HR and to be honest, across Experian, we're all trying to do our best to help people. And specifically in the role that I have, it's every day trying to support people. And I think in order to kind of maintain that level and sustainability for kind of the energy that demands or requires to help people on that scale, you have to make sure that you're, keeping yourself mentally well, and knowing where to put your energy and making sure that you have the right coping mechanisms in place and definitely focusing on resilience. So this year I've been on a bit of a journey myself. Starting from about September last year, I started working with a mentor, a lady called Rachel Neal, who is head of HR for EITS in the UK. She's a fantastic lady. I've been working with her every month to develop in certain areas, and that's been completely invaluable. Alongside that, I've also had a series of counselling sessions through our EAP provider LifeWorks in the UK, looking at kind of confidence issues and self-worth. So yeah, I think for me, I've done quite a lot of the self-development this year to try and make sure that I am most prepared to be effective in this role, and also to be just myself at home outside of work, because it's quite a challenging environment that I find myself in this arena at work, and kind of being able to switch off at the end of the day is really important. So some of the things that I've focused on quite a lot recently is making sure I have those coping mechanisms in place. So some of those include limiting the time that I'm spending on social media and reading the news. I've actually recently taken a step back from LinkedIn as well, because I found that to be quite hard. Initially, when all of this happened, seeing the response that people had to it and the way that they've reacted and fantastic work that they've done. Initially, I felt very overwhelmed by that, thinking I need to be doing something, but I don't know what that something is, and it kind of paralyzed me. And I kind of had a period of low mood for a few days. That. So I've learned my lesson. I'm not comparing myself to others. They're on their own journey, and that's okay. Small acts of kindness can make a world of difference. So wherever I can do, just trying to help people that are vulnerable in today's climate. So making sure my neighbours know how to contact me. They're quite elderly, so they need me to nip to the shop, etc. Just helping other people. That's something that we can all do. Given appropriate social distancing. Listening to music, so that's something that I do quite a lot of. And Mike, I think a few years ago, actually, when I first started Experian, I put a post on Chatter about Spotify Wrapped, and I think you may have commented on it. I'm trying to remember if you did.
He probably did. Yeah, he probably did.
Yeah. I posted a competition basically saying, could anyone beat my the amount of music I'd listened to that year? It kind of accounted for about 77,000 hours or minutes or something. I think my maths way off there. But, I challenged people, and I think you responded to it.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Yeah. But that's something that I absolutely rely on, just switching off, putting my headphones in and listening to some Thomas Newman and just relaxing. That's how I unwind. But one of the core things is kind of also accepting that sometimes if I don't, this is really this, it'd be like solving the world's problems, and I want to focus on myself, that's okay, and I'm okay with that. That took a long time to get my head around, because I felt that any kind of waking hour of the day, I should be directing my attention to, fixing this or solving that or talking about this or finding a solution to that. And I was on a trajectory to being completely burnt out. So, just trying to make time for myself.
I love that you mentioned that.
Go ahead, Patty.
I love that you mentioned that, because I feel like all over social media, you see people who are like, this is the best time to be productive and to work on your passion projects. And, you see people waking up at 5 a.m. and doing yoga. And it's just like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's allowed for us to just survive at this moment. Like, we don't have to make something out of this time, and it's a time of crisis, So I love that you mentioned that sometimes you don't need to be that productive. You just need to be able to take care of yourself and keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. The amount of posts on Instagram or LinkedIn. What are you doing? If you're not doing something, what are you doing? You just the circle or whatever. It's like, no, actually, I'm just surviving. Like, exactly. I'm doing whatever I can to keep myself, okay, mentally okay, and just, seeing each day in and day out. Like, that's what I'm doing is enough, and that's okay. But it does it is quite hard to kind of get to that point when that's all you're seeing on social media. I think it's quite difficult to kind of let yourself know that it is okay.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like because all of us have our like routines flipped. Like we've had certain things that we've done to energize ourselves, to make ourselves happy before the pandemic, and now a lot of those things we can't do anymore. And so I found that it's been tough for me because like my normal routine was like every morning I'd head to the gym and do my workout.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would go to a local coffee shop and read and journal. And then I'd go to work. And I had like pretty much 3 to 4 hours to myself every morning to kind of recharge. And now that with the pandemic, like I can't go to the gym. And I have I'm so like consumed with news, unfortunately. Like my time in the morning to like journal and do my reading is like, now I'm like flipping through the news and like wanting to keep up with what's happening in the world. And that could be very overwhelming to me. And so I'm trying to like figure this out too. And similar to like what you were saying about people talking about how are you staying productive? How are you like, you can use this time to like work on your passion projects. I'm like, I have no desire to work on any sort of passion project.
Zero desire.
I'm just like trying to get through this. I'm actually watching more Netflix more than ever, just to like get my mind off of everything that's happening.
Yeah. No, it's that's exactly it. I think I started this with the approach, okay, I need to, throw myself into this. I need to make sure that I'm coming up with fantastic new initiatives, both at work and at home. And I just had to take a step back and think, this isn't sustainable. I'm trying to manage expectations at work and manage, the well-being side of things, because that is huge right now and it's so important. But I'm only as good as what I can kind of input. And if I don't have the energy to do that, then I'm going to struggle. So I've had to take a step back and think, okay, start small and think what it is that I need to do to make sure that I'm okay. And my anxiety, when all this happened, my anxiety was through the roof. And it's kind of week by week at the minute in terms of the triggers that I'm finding. Being on social media sometimes that's a trigger. Last week having to reschedule this conversation because I had an anxiety attack in the supermarket at the pharmacy section. It just got overwhelming, and I had to come home. As much as I was looking forward to talking with you, I felt quite disheartened that I had to ask to reschedule. But you just have to take a step back and think, I'm not going to be able to give this the attention or the energy that it needs, because I'm just trying to cope with what's happening right now, and it is just trying to put your hand up and say, I need to recharge, I need to relax, I need to switch off, and that's okay.
I love how vulnerable you are about your mental health, and I feel like it kind of shows other people who might not be as vulnerable that they're allowed to talk about these kinds of issues. Do you have any advice for people who are a little more hesitant to talk about their mental health and maybe needing help and where they can reach out?
Yeah. So, thank you for your comment just then. It is something that I actively try and make a conscious decision to talk about, because I kind of know firsthand the impact that stigma has and around mental health. And I think the less we talk about it, the more we add to that stigma around how people feel about talking about mental health. And I think one of the important things that we can each do is, if we're struggling, just to say we're having a difficult time. It's quite when you first start openly talking about mental health, it can be a bit weird and a bit surreal, and people can be a bit like, are they oversharing? That's making me a bit uncomfortable. But I think that's where the stigma lies. And I think as long as we're all trying to normalize that conversation, the better chance we have to kind of living in a world where we're all being who we are and talking about all the, not necessarily, throwing out your dirty laundry and saying, look, this is me, but certainly, sharing that if you are, feeling like you're having an anxiety attack or that you found something particularly difficult, or perhaps you're noticing somebody within the business that top tips. I've been sharing quite a lot of TED Talks recently because I think the content there is absolutely incredible. There's a conversation recently by a lady called Lucy Hone, who shared her 3 strategies for resilience. And they were kind of game changers for me, and I have them pinned up just above my desk here, so that I'm living them day in, day out. So yeah, that's a long story. Definitely not cut short either, but but that's me.
I like that. I think it's so important that teams right now especially come together and are very, very sensitive to the mood of each person, making sure that people are checking in. But there's got to also be that trust there, because not everyone's going to want to share with each individual on their team. Do you have advice for team members who maybe that they are wanting to share a little bit about their anxiety, their depression during this period, but they're maybe not feeling super close to anyone right now? Things that they can do to get help, or just maybe they're not even like, I'm not ready to get help, but I do want to share a little bit about what I'm going through.
I guess it depends on what space that person wants to share that information with. I think there's different platforms that people can use. I think if you're someone that doesn't necessarily feel comfortable sharing with your team, your direct team at work, then perhaps looking at the different networks that are out there for people. I know you have the Aspire network. We call them networks in the UK. I think you call them ERGs in the US. But we have networks over here in the UK as well. And perhaps it's a case of joining a network where potentially nobody really knows who you are within that area, and it's a safe space to be able to share a little bit about what you're going through, some of your anxieties and fears, and have a conversation with them, because 9 out of 10 times you're probably going to find somebody else that's in the same boat. So I would absolutely recommend engaging with our ERGs and our networks, but reaching out to people as well. I'm always available to have a conversation with anyone that needs to talk about mental health, anxiety, depression, whatever it is that you're going through. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. In the UK, we also have mental health first aiders. So they are trained people who have been, gone on a 2-day course to talk about, how to help people in a mental health crisis. But they're there to talk to as well. So you can have a conversation with an individual who's trained in mental health first aid about anything to do with mental health. You don't necessarily have to be in a crisis right there and right then. If you're somebody that's struggling day in, day out, or you're noticing that you've got an increased sense of anxiety, then just have a chat with them and just share what you're going through. In the UK as well, I'm referring to UK support lines, but I'm sure you have them in the US as well. We have Samaritans in the UK where you can talk to somebody on the phone or over email. They're completely independent. They don't know who you are. They're there to listen and to help. So there's so many resources and helplines and people out there that you can reach out to. If it's not somebody directly in your team or your family or your friends, there's always going to be there's always somebody there that you can speak to. I've also found myself sometimes, if I don't know how to have a conversation with somebody about what I'm going through, is actually just taking time to write down how I'm feeling, just as in like a blog format. And sometimes I'll share it, sometimes I won't. Sometimes it just helps, quite kind of cathartic, just to write down all those emotions, those thoughts, those feelings. So you've kind of taken them out of your body, and it's you kind of letting it go slightly. So there's lots of different ways you can share without having to, openly share with people that you might not feel comfortable doing so.
That's really good advice. In fact, my therapist is always telling me to journal. I'm really bad about journaling. I like to talk. So my thing has been like, I like to just talk alone in my car. Like usually on my drives, you just kind of like talk it out. That's how I do it. And also when I like go on my long bike rides, or if I go running, I'll just be thinking about processing those different things that I'm going through. Yeah. I used to write a lot more when I was younger, but right now I'm in this season of like, I can't write about it. I gotta talk it out. That's how I'm dealing with it right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to do as well. I know exactly what you mean. When I'm in the house by myself, which is never at the minute. If I am working from home normally in the day by myself, if I'm struggling, it might sound a bit silly, but just standing in front of the mirror and having a conversation with yourself, it does help. Just say, why am I feeling like this? What's caused it? This is what's happened in the day. What could have what's kind of bugged me? Has there been something was there a conversation that didn't go so well, or I'm a classic overthinker. I literally, as soon as my head hits the pillow, all I'm doing is thinking about every single conversation I've had. And like analysing it to the detail. So yeah, I think just trying to figure out what works for you. If it's journaling, that's great. If it's having a conversation in the mirror, fine. Sitting in your car, whatever you need to do. I think just making sure that you're reflecting where you can do, maybe not overthinking and overanalyzing when you're trying to sleep, but having productive designated time. So my mentor, Rachel Lean, she suggested that once a week I block some time out in my diary, whether that's 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever, just to reflect on the week and, just kind of see how well it's gone. Was there things that didn't go so well? What were they? Okay, acknowledge them. I'll do them differently next week and move on. I think that's a really good exercise to do.
That is so I think reflection is so important. And like I find like whenever I go running in the mornings, like that's my time of reflection. I'm just, my hour run, I'm just thinking really about my work, what I'm doing, how I'm handling issues with my family. Like, I think reflection is super important. I'm really happy to hear your mentor was like, hey, set aside time in your day, put it on your calendar. Like totally, 100%. That is a great advice.
Yeah. She's brilliant. I think the work, I said to her today, I had a session with her this morning, and I was saying to her, the work that we've done together has been absolutely incredible. And if she ever needed a testimonial for her mentoring skills, I said, hit me up, because, you've been incredible. I remember thinking where I was in September last year. I was very, very nervous. I didn't like talking about myself. Whenever I was in a situation like this, where I was talking, about myself and my experiences, I would get this stress rash, and I've had it for years, literally my whole life, and it would just overwhelm my body. It would be covered in a rash, and my confidence was like this. But working with her, just working through some of the issues that I've had, the confidence issues, working with my counsellor, it's just really helped to bring that to life. And Rachel, she's just been fantastic. So I would absolutely recommend finding yourself a Rachel and getting that self-development time, because it's completely changed my life. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I find that sometimes to me, the best mentors are those who have kind of gone through similar things. Like, they understand where you're coming from. They've had, anxiety, they've had depression, they've gone through really difficult seasons. And to me, those are the people I connect with. Like, yes, like, let's talk about these things that we've both gone through. Like, it helps me hear how other people have kind of gone through their journey and what they're currently struggling in. And I think those conversations are super powerful and super meaningful. You don't feel alone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. The one thing I think that I try to make sure I'm communicating within Experian is that when we're not alone. Everybody's going through something, and there is never going to be a one-size-that-fits-all approach to kind of helping people with mental health or well-being in general. You mentioned going out for runs, and that's something that, as a well-being manager, technically I should be promoting. And living that value and living that. Oh yes, I start my day with a bowl of fruit. And then, some poached eggs, and I have a smoothie, and then I go for a run. Nope, that's not my life. But I do admire anybody that can do that. Definitely. But yeah, I think it is a challenge right now, just to find out what works for everybody, because it is difficult. There isn't a rule book or any guidelines of how to respond to kind of these challenges that we face right now. So we all just have to figure it out.
Yeah. Amy had a question about those who are approached by a colleague. Someone comes up to them and they feel that trust, that they feel that there's a strong relationship there, and someone begins to share what's on their heart, and it's something that's really hard. And I know that I struggle sometimes, even though I have been there, I have been that person, and I'm actually that person a lot. I have a lot of anxiety. I've shared this with Patty. I go to a therapist. Oftentimes in our one-on-ones, it's like Patty's my therapist. She's asking me I want to give Patty my payments. But I'm kind of curious, how should people be responding when someone approaches them and tells them about a difficulty, and it could be anxiety, depression, and they don't feel equipped to handle, I'm not sure how I should answer this. I'm not even sure what to say in this moment. And do you have any advice for those of us who are receiving this information from somebody we love, someone that we have a good relationship with, and we're like, oh no, how do I navigate this?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, Mike. And it's actually something that I've been working on quite a lot recently, is trying to help managers, for example, be able to have a difficult conversation with somebody that they might not feel equipped or skilled in being able to kind of respond to that. So, like I mentioned earlier, we have mental health first aiders who are trained to be able to respond to those situations. But if you're a manager, or if you're a friend of somebody that's coming to you with a problem, and they've had a particularly difficult time, whether they're really struggling with low mood, whether they've recently experienced loss, and you're just not sure how to kind of respond to that. I've been working with a lady within the business recently who volunteers her time as a Samaritan in the UK. And for those that don't know, Samaritans support people, the most vulnerable people within the UK, specifically around mental health challenges, specifically those in a mental health crisis, potentially thinking about suicide or actually, planning and preparing for their suicide, but they help those people by listening. And they have some really clear advice, which you can find on their website, about how to have a difficult conversation and how to be an effective listener. And they use something called the shush technique, which is an acronym for the following. I've got it up on my screen just so that I get it right. So it's 1, show that you care. So focus in on the individual, as you said at the start, kind of making sure that you kind of, as we were talking earlier, making sure that your attention is on the person. So putting all technology away, turning notifications off, making sure that you're listening to the individual and letting them know that they have your attention. H, which is have patience. So it might take some time and several attempts before somebody feels ready to kind of completely open up with you. But letting them know that you're there and that you're ready to talk whenever they want to talk. Even if you don't feel equipped, it's just making sure that they know that you're there, and if they do need to talk, that you are going to sit and listen. The third one is U, which is use open questions. So this is something that I found interesting. Instead of kind of trying to provide advice or a solution to the person's problem, is using open questions. So asking questions that require more than a yes or no answer, and following up with questions like "tell me more." So if somebody, for example, is saying, I feel really rubbish and I don't know why, it is kind of prompting them, okay, well, tell me about your day, what started this thought process, where did that come from, this emotion come from, and just kind of trying to break that down a little bit more. Without, saying, well, if I was in your position, I would do this. I tend to default to that, so this is a learning curve for me. The fourth one is say it back. So check that you've understood, but don't interrupt or try to offer a solution. It's a case of reiterating to make sure that person feels that they've been heard. And the last one, H, which is have courage. So try not to be put off by a negative response. If somebody responds negatively to what you've said, or to your suggestion to open up and talk, it's making sure that they feel that they can come back to you at a different time, and having courage to say that to them in the first place. I'm here to help. Sometimes it can feel a bit intrusive and counterintuitive to ask someone how they feel, and they're not ready to share that. So you'll quickly kind of tell if someone's uncomfortable and doesn't want to engage with you on that level. So a long-winded response to your question, Mike, but I think there's some important learnings there that I've certainly taken away myself. But essentially, just having somebody listen could be all that person needs. And it doesn't matter if you feel ill-equipped to solve their problems. They're not necessarily asking you to do that. It could just be that they just need you to listen.
And that's solid advice. I love that. Oh man. And I like that acronym SHUSH. That's such the key part. Like, that's my problem sometimes. I like to talk. People are trying to share with me, and I have to learn to just be quiet.
Yeah.
Listen. And sometimes my natural response is trying to find a solution and give it. And that's totally the wrong way to go.
Yeah. I find that too. It's really hard because it fights all your natural instincts, because you want to make it better for somebody. You want to make them feel better. You want to make sure that you're doing everything you can do to help their situation. And sometimes all you can do is just literally just take a step back and shush and just listen. So I really, really like and appreciate that technique from the Samaritans. I think it's fantastic. I can share that with you, the link to that information, if you want to use it, Mike, for anything in particular.
Yeah, that'd be great. We should actually put that on our blog too, Becky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll do that. I think one of my main issues is when I'm listening to someone confide in me, is that I don't want them to feel alone. So I try to find a situation that I can help them relate to, and then I end up inadvertently making it about me. So I think, yeah, the acronym is really good because it's just like, yeah, shush, be quiet, just listen. You're not being expected to come up with any solutions. And that's really important to remember.
Yeah, no, it is. It really, really is. I think it's a big learning for me because, yeah, in mental health specifically, you want to make sure that people trust you and that they kind of trust your authenticity as well. And I find it quite challenging in creating an environment where somebody can share what they're going through and know that they can trust that the person that they're talking to understands what they're going through and can show that level of empathy and compassion that they need. But without making it about yourself, it's really quite a challenge because that's not what you want to do. You don't want to make the conversation about yourself, but at the same time, you want to make sure that person understands that you get it. It's a fine line.
Yeah, and I think also what's hard too is that I like to have these conversations in person because to me, like all the nonverbal communication that happens in a room, and also I feel more secure if I'm in a private room with that person. Like I know that there's a wall boundary, like no one else can hear us. Video chat, like, is there a child walking in the background? Right?
Yeah.
And also, it's like it's different doing a video chat versus being in person. Like, I wish we were doing this all together, around a table, so we can actually have that. Also, I think it adds a lot to communication. So I think that's also what's hard right now is that even for me, when meeting my therapist, like we're now doing the calls through video chat because that's the only way that we can do it. And I feel like we have a much better connection when I'm in the office having a private conversation. Like I feel more secure in that environment. So I think that's also that's what's making it difficult during this time to have these conversations with our colleagues.
Yeah, the issue is that level of authentic connection with people, and that human connection. It's so important. The level of isolation that people must feel, if they're isolating alone, that's something that I am very aware of. I have friends that are isolating alone and trying to make sure that I connect with them daily. Just, even if it is just at the end of the day, just to drop them a message, just to let them know that, that they're not out of sight, out of mind. That can be really easily done when you're working remotely. If you're not in the office, then you can kind of think, have people forgotten that I'm part of the team? That's something that we all need to be aware of and make a conscious effort to make sure that we're connecting with people, all over our team, even if we don't normally do it. And like friends and family, I don't know about you guys, but I have never been more connected to my family and friends than I am right now. Every night is a virtual quiz or a virtual or virtual house party or whatever. And I'm like, gosh, I'm sure I normally don't see these people more than twice a year, but which is lovely. But it's a strange world that we live in right now. And there's a quote recently, I'll try and remember it. And it was, in a rush to get back to normal, we have to decide what's worth rushing back to. And I loved that sentiment because I think right now people are taking stock about some aspects of this are really challenging and very hard. And, I can't put myself in people's positions that have lost family members and friends. I can't imagine the pain that people are going through. But for some people right now, it's about taking stock about what changes they want to potentially make in their life, and having the opportunity and the headspace to be able to figure that out. It's a privilege and it's something that we should be really grateful for. I certainly spent a lot of time over this Easter bank holiday weekend that we had in the UK, just appreciating being able to slow down and figuring out what I want my world to look like after all of this has kind of settled down. I have no idea when that will be. I'm supposed to be getting married next August. I hope it's settled down by then.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I did take out insurance recently, so I have to use it. But it's a period of time for reflection, as we said, and really just trying to practice gratitude. That is definitely underrated, but it's incredible. It's an incredible resilience tool. Just to take stock of what you're really grateful for, the people in your life that you're grateful for, and if there are things that you took advantage of, previously, like being able to see your friends, go down the local pub or go for food, go for dinner, all of those things that you perhaps took advantage of, then it's kind of realizing where to show your gratitude.
And you touched on something that is super important, and that's those who are isolated. And you gave really good advice for those of us who maybe live with somebody or have family that we're able to interact with at our homes. But there are a whole bunch of people, like you said, who don't have that. They're by themselves. Some of them may have just broken up with their partners. Maybe some are divorced and are feeling very lonely. And I'm wondering if you can share any advice or things that they can do during this time that's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like. I have tried, and there was a period of time where I lived by myself, and it was a very isolating world that I created for myself, and I shut myself off from everyone, and I stopped talking to people. Whilst I was at uni, it was a difficult time for me, and I found that really difficult. So there is something right now that I mentioned earlier. I listened to this TED Talk by a lady called Lucy Hone, and one of her strategies she mentions here, asking yourself, what am I doing? Is what I'm doing hindering or harming me? So I think for that example, is what you're doing, are you shutting your world off completely from people? Are you just because you're isolated by yourself, are you now isolating permanently from other people? Are you stopping giving people a ring? Are you cutting back on your social media but inadvertently stopping that connection with people, friends and family that might be in the same position as you? I think I don't have any kind of personal advice that I can give people self-isolating, because I'm not doing it myself, and I think I would be the wrong person to give that advice to. But what I can suggest is just to make sure that whatever communication channel exists for you, whether that's through work, whether that's through your friends or your family, making sure that they stay open and stay as open as they can do. So making sure that you're taking time and remembering to give somebody a ring or drop them a WhatsApp message, or just engage with them on a social media platform, or just give them a text. Like, that is something that I neglected to do for a good 3 years, and it was not a nice world that I created for myself. So I would hate for other people to start to do that themselves. I think people that are particularly vulnerable are those that have struggled or struggling with mental health challenges already. If you go through periods of low mood, you get into a mindset where you want to withdraw sometimes. And if you're self-isolating and that loneliness kicks in and that low mood kicks in and you do start to withdraw even more, those chances to engage with people get smaller and smaller, and that's where the risk lies. So I would just encourage people to stay connected, and I would encourage people that know individuals that are self-isolating by themselves, just to check in on those individuals and even if the one thing as well, if you're in a headspace where so this is something in mental health, if you're somebody that struggles with low mood and depression, perhaps you don't want to text back to people, you don't want to engage with people, and you've already got to that point where you've shut yourself off. One of the things that we can do to help those individuals is just stay talking to them. And one thing that I will be forever grateful for when I was struggling was my friend Jack. He would just drop me messages, text messages, even though I would never reply to them. He would just text me random things that he was doing that day, because he didn't know how to respond, and he didn't know that was helping me, but it really did. And people just like to know if they're in that situation, they don't want to reply to you immediately, that they still really, really appreciate getting that random text from you just to say, whatever you've been doing that day and you're thinking about them. There's no words to explain how grateful I was for those text messages.
I love that. We've been talking a lot about self-awareness and just being sensitive to how we're feeling. But there are a bunch of people also who may be struggling with anxiety, depression, and may not even realize it. I'll share with you, when I was younger, I was going through a lot of anxiety. And for me, it actually manifested physically, where my legs started shaking, uncontrollably. And I was really scared. I thought I had the nervous disorder. I didn't know what was going on. I was going to my doctor, and my legs were just shaking uncontrollably. And my doctor ran all these tests on me, and I had a brain scan. I had a number of other tests done to see what was going on. Found out that there was nothing physically going on. There was no nervous disorder. It was actually anxiety and panic attacks that I was having. And my doctor was at the time asking me, I was 20, I was in university. He's like, "Are you anxious? Do you have anxiety?" And I was like, "No, I don't have any anxiety." And he's like, "Well, what's going on in your life?" And I was like, "Well," and I started to share things that were happening. And I started realizing that there were all these big things that were happening in my life that I just totally just kind of put away in my life. And I was not self-aware at all that I had anxiety. Not at all. And I didn't know I had an anxiety disorder. Didn't know what panic attacks were. But that's what I was dealing with. And thankfully at that time, my doctor put me on some anxiety medicine and things like Calm Down, and later on got therapy, still in therapy. But I'm very, very fortunate to have gotten that diagnosis, to be able to get help early on. But prior to that, I realized, I got through therapy, that I actually had anxiety disorder since going back to my childhood, and I could actually pinpoint things that I went through now. Yeah. But I had no idea that I had anxiety. And so I was wondering, maybe we can end this show talking to those who maybe have no idea that they may be anxious or coming into a stage of depression. Do they feel like everything is going all right, but underlying everything, there is this underlying anxiety that's there that they're not even aware about?
Yeah, I think, I think there's going to be quite a lot of people that resonates with Mike and can absolutely relate to your experience. So thank you for sharing that. I think for people that that aren't self-aware around mental health, I think that's something that we focus quite a lot on within we're trying to focus quite a lot on within the everyMIND network, is bringing that to the attention of people. So our everyMIND network leader, Rachel Lyon, she shared, I interviewed her recently around her experiences with mental health, and that's not her personally, actually, it's her husband, who spent years and years of his life with Rachel and their family being completely oblivious to the fact that he struggles with bipolar disorder, and the challenges that they faced within their life together, not knowing that those issues that were coming up, those struggles, those battles and barriers that he was facing were due to a mental health condition. And the kind of awareness that they had, when they got that diagnosis and that support, was a big relief to them, in that they could understand how to help him. And I think that's something that they found through looking at articles and resources on the internet and guidance from the NHS, our healthcare provider, and just kind of researching things and gaining perspective, looking into other people's experiences of bipolar, for example, and thinking, that was me, and having that penny drop moment, thinking, actually, I can see a lot of that in myself. And I think the more that people share their experiences in a vocal platform and like this, and being able to have a conversation with people around, our experiences of our mental health challenges, people listening and thinking, crikey, that's my experience too. And, maybe they've spent their whole life being completely unaware of where that adrenaline comes from. I don't know, it sounds like that's where your adrenaline was being directed to through anxiety to your leg. I get it within my hand, I get a shaky hand. And perhaps they've lived their whole life with that and not realising that chest tightness that they might be feeling is actually anxiety, and it's not a health not a major health concern. It's actually adrenaline from anxiety. And I think the more we talk about this in environments like this that wouldn't typically have this conversation, but it might filter through to people that are just interested in this conversation. I think the more people that talk about mental health, the more awareness that we bring, and the more visibility that it has, the more people have the opportunity to realise that it might be that's what they're going through, and that they're not alone.
I think that's a wonderful way to end this. This is beautiful.
Thank you so much for speaking with us, Amy. Do you have any last words for our listeners as we all go through this pandemic together?
Well, I mean, we're all in this together. Every day is a challenge, and there's no one way that that we can all approach this to make sure that we're living our best life or whatever. I think right now it's just survival mode, and whatever you're doing, if it's helping you, that's enough. You don't need to be doing any more or any less. So I think. I think if anybody ever wants to talk to me about anything to do with what we've discussed today, you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, an email, whatever. But always happy to have a conversation. And thank you both for giving me this opportunity to have a chat with you today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm really grateful for it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And before we go, I got to give a shout out to Amy Priest on LinkedIn. Make sure you're following Amy Priest, because love her posts, and even though she's taking a break from LinkedIn, she'll be back. Amy's a brilliant writer. I always love her posts, and she has a wonderful community of people who chime in. So I always look forward to reading them. No pressure, Amy. There's no need to go at this point, but I want to encourage everyone to follow her so that when she does post things, you can engage with her there.
Thank you, Mike. That's really nice.
All right. Thank you, Amy.
No, thank you both.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Level Up.
If you'd like to see a summary of today's show, you can go to the Experian blog. The short URL is just ex.pn/levelup.
If you found any of the information today helpful, please consider supporting us by hitting subscribe or leaving us a review. Thanks for dropping in and giving us a listen, and we hope to see you again for our next episode.